We live. Hola, marhaba, good morning, bonjour, and ni hao. This is Mohamed Aboshanab. You can always call me Mo, international lawyer and global tax expert. We have a very interesting guest with us today. We have been, you can say, LinkedIn friends for a couple of years now. I would like he introduce himself, Gerard. Um, at the pleasure to have you here at last. And so if you would like to introduce yourself to our guests and listeners.
First of all, thank you very much, Mo, for this opportunity to be able to speak with you on this podcast. So thank you very much for that. My name is Gerard. I am originally Dutch. I live in Zurich, Switzerland right now. That's where I'm at. And from there, yes, we're going to go into this podcast. A little bit about my background. I lived in Cyprus from 2008 until 2013. Started to work out for an offshore company, which quickly transitioned for me into becoming involved in the river cruise industry. Eventually, I ended up becoming CEO, partly owner of that company. I transitioned out in 2019. In that same year, I survived a base jump accident, extreme sports base jumping accident, and later on, I ended up getting involved into an investment fund, real estate investment fund, and after that, I did some consulting. In between, I've did many things because the offshore industry in general is something that is close to me as a person from early 90s, I would say. So I'm kind of well aware of what happened in the past and how it changed throughout the last couple of decades.
So you are consider the old style of offshore, where people think about offshore 007, people with stash of cash, they traveled in Caribbean islands and the open offshore accounts.
Left and right and center. Yes, it for me it all started basically late 80s with legacy books from W.G. Hill. He
Mm.
wrote PT1 and PT2 among others, and from there my interest started in this industry in general. I've seen how it changed from wild west cowboy style to how it is now, very regulated, of course. Um, Over time, I also acquired, for instance, a handful of STEP certificates to more understand of how the industry was changing based on the legal perspective mostly. And and ever since the last certificate I passed in 2015, ever since we're 10 years down the road, it's again completely different to what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think it's the last, you can say, from 2015 to 2025, the whole offshore industry was rebuilt again from the scratch.
Yeah, I would
Especially,
say it actually started around 2010. That was when the Lisbon Treaty, the becoming the EU, started to get into full force, and all the member states started to implement what was basically agreed upon in the Lisbon Treaty. And based on that, we have seen a lot of changes, and it kind of coincides also with 9/11, of course, that has changed the industry very drastically. Some things for the better, but I also gotta admit some things I don't see it. I really have issues with how certain things have been uh, taken forward by collectively the governments because it's not benefiting nor them, nor the clients, nor the professionals working in this industry.
do you think generally that uh, we've reached the stage of over regulation?
Yes, yes. In my opinion, yes. KYC, don't get me wrong, I'm all for that. Uh, Becoming more strict continuously in KYC, I don't see the point of it anymore. Once you have identified who your beneficial owner is, that is where that one point stops. The need to continuously do KYC and to continuously keep your records up to date, I understand. However, in I think it was around 2010, I already made the yeah, prediction that larger SME companies and larger would definitely end up having a dedicated person for compliance in their teams. And what we see now is, yes, fortunately, there's very smart software out there. But what we see now is that indeed there are departments being built from scratch, focusing only on compliance. A very common example is, of course, with banks. Banks have this already for, a little over close to 2 decades, I think. Um, but we also see it now in just your regular larger companies or medium-sized enterprises where they hire a corporate lawyer who is not doing corporate law tasks anymore, but is only filling in forms to comply with KYC requests from suppliers, from clients, from other institutions, filling in surveys left and right all day, every day. And that, in my opinion, defeats the purpose. Where does it leave the entrepreneur? I mean, there's no room for being an entrepreneur anymore. That much compliance has been dumped on us.
Yeah, I understand. It's like I mean, I think the overregulation is one of the industry hurdles that happen now, especially on the offshore and even in the onshore. I mean, if you
Yes.
following things happening in the UK and not, I mean, they are outside the EU now, but still they are trying to put more and more regulation and you can say small small entrepreneurs, people who would like to grow their businesses, and the coming from a different mindset, the Gen Z generation, they don't think about, they don't have the idea that where it's coming from. They don't look 20 or 30 years ago about the problems that happen in the world. They think the generation was born in the internet era, the iPhone era, and they don't understand that there's someone else have to check my compliance to make sure that my transfer or my transaction or my business is compliant. So there is a huge gap generation that's happening, and over compliance, I think, will reach a limit that it will already limiting a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs. And do you think that what is happening right now in the US, regardless the political situation, that they start to deregulate some of the over compliance that happening in banks and doing business, or they are doing it with the cowboy ways?
Well, first of all, the US has always enforced rules upon the rest of the world.
Yes.
They never really followed their own rules to begin with. Try to open a bank account in the US as a foreigner. I don't know how it is since 2022. But before 2022, you just walked into any branch, and if you had a passport or a driver's license on you, you walked out of that branch in half an hour later with an active bank account. 2 days later, you had a bank card. And 2 weeks later, you had a dozen application forms for credit cards. Um, so the US has definitely not really followed their own set of rules in that sense. How they are now deregulating, I think, first of all, I think they should become a little bit more strict because a lot of issues have been thrown upon us because of doing business with the US. It has not always made things easier. I'm not talking about the specific things where we cannot do business with sanctioned countries, etc., but just in general, just a normal activity somewhere in Europe doing business with clients, say also in Europe, maybe Eastern Europe or even some neutral African countries. And all of a sudden you also have an American client. And based on that, your bank accounts are being frozen. These are things I've seen happening in the recent 3, 4 years. Unfortunately, more often than I would like to see it happen. And at the same time, do we really stop criminals with it? I have my doubts on that. Yeah, of course, there's always the exception, and that's the exception you and me read about in the media. In general, the exception does not confirm the rule. And that's where I struggle. And the best example for me when I started to struggle with compliance was when Cyprus had its financial crisis, its banking crisis. Um, we did business with Cyprus banks, and all of a sudden everything was frozen, and it took a while before we could continue doing business, etc. First of all, we were very lucky. Call it a gut feeling or not. But on that Friday before the banks were closed, on that Saturday morning after, I actually had a batch of payments ready for payment on Monday. And while I was looking at the bank, I was like, you know what? Everything is confirmed already. Let me just upload and confirm, because I knew I was going to be traveling on that Sunday and Monday, so that I don't have to worry about this anymore. So I hit enter, and that literally saved the company from going bankrupt at that point in time. Because after that, the money was frozen and also capped, of course. Everyone always thought, oh yeah, no, it's only capped on savings accounts. But that was not true to begin with. I understand where the confusion comes from. And at the same time, I would say that's a deliberate use of confusion to get the general public to understand that what was happening wasn't really a big problem, which in the end it of course was. So having said that, after that, we could use, we had backup banks already in place for that company. So we transferred, in a blink of an eye. It was just informing our clients, hey, we're going to use different banks. So please, every invoice you haven't paid yet, pay it to this new bank account details. And they did. No one asked questions. Everyone understood. A couple of phone calls, etc. So all sorted. And from there on, we started to pay our suppliers and everyone that we owed any outstanding money. And so basically that worked. A couple of months later, I think it was about 6 months later, all in all, we were able to transfer back part of the operations of the banking operations to the island of Cyprus. We banked with the Laiki Bank at that point in time. So that was transferred to the Bank of Cyprus. And from then on, for every single transaction, even if it was only €5 or €10, we had to upload a document to prove that the payment was necessary, so to say. So for every single document, we couldn't do batch payments anymore. Imagine doing salaries. Okay, it took another 2 months, and then they accepted that batch payments for salaries, etc., could be taken care of if we just forwarded the pay slips, for instance. But still, it did not make any sense. And this is where I understand the risk of capital flight, etc. But you should not limit at one point companies or civilians doing business. It's just going about their normal day-to-day thing. And because as a company incorporated in Cyprus, we were also contributing to the Cyprus economy.
That's right. Yeah.
And we eventually, that led to us, not moving away from Cyprus, but Cyprus still has a lot of benefits, but to diversify, not just the banks, but also the companies. And this is for me in a very clear moment where I thought, okay, now the compliance part is overreaching. And that's more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
And from then on, it only became worse. Do I believe in some form of compliance? Yes, without a doubt. The overregulation, as you stated yourself, no, please not. Because in the end, it will avoid people from starting their activity, in starting a startup, starting whatever they think they want or do. They will avoid it. And in the end, you see it already with some, call them the cowboys of the modern world now, the people that are very active in crypto. Don't get me wrong, I support it fully, but they make sure that they are being paid, for instance, in stable coins. And they deal with all the issues after they are being paid, and dealing with all the issues. In reality, that also means that they get to decide right now, and this is cowboy world one-on-one, on when they report for taxes and if they report for taxes. So in the end, I think, especially if we look at the last couple of years, how things are drastically changing, that this could become a big problem. And you now see that the compliance part is really focusing upon the blockchain industry, crypto industry in general. The issue I have with that is that, yes, it covers a part, but it doesn't cover everything, because the legislation on which KYC was built doesn't cover the blockchain and crypto industry.
That's right. That's one of the things that governments now, especially, they trying to over-regulate the crypto or the blockchain industry, but the industry itself built or based its you can say concept on decentralization. They don't have, I mean, the idea of having a blockchain that it to be decentralized. So you're trying to centralize something is already decentralized. That's sometimes it's making nonsense. As I discussed to you at the beginning, that yesterday I have an inquiry from a client who would like to set up a foundation for his crypto business in Zug. And because you're based in Zurich, you understand more than me about that kind of regulation. Zug now is coming as a global, you can say, Silicon Valley for crypto
Yes.
industry, especially in Europe and other jurisdiction. Can you give me more information about this and how you see that this is Zug is a very small canton in the country, and they are attracting billions and billions of dollars from all over the world because they are using their minds and see the opportunity and work on it. So if you elaborate more in such um, um, for your experience and how such new, especially not just famous places like London, Zurich, New York, or Dubai. There is a more emerging places that grabbing opportunities which is others has missed.
It's not just the canton of Zug, it's also the canton of Zurich, which is very, very um, busy in developing a roadmap for attracting crypto or blockchain industry in general, new tech, fintech. The original situation with Zug is based on taxes. Zug was one of the most favorable corporate tax jurisdictions or cantons in Switzerland. Besides Zug, there are a couple of others as well. For instance, if you ever rent a car in Switzerland, you always see AI on the license plate. It stands for Appenzellinerode, and that's a little canton that basically um, is being used by all the car rental companies. So Hertz is there, and um, Sixt, and you name them. They're all based. Their headquarters are based in Appenzellinerode, and that is because they have a favorable situation for car rental companies over there. Some other cantons, Luzern is doing very well. Uh, Schwyz is also a very famous one in that sense. And these are cantons that are very yeah, they saw an opportunity and they seized upon it. And Switzerland in general has embraced the blockchain industry as one of the early ones, I would say, globally. Right now, you can actually see that being one of the early ones actually now attracts the billions of inflow from the larger companies, the established ones, because we have a framework in Switzerland, and that framework uh, is supporting those companies in general because they are stock. They have a stock registration, so they're traded on the New York Stock Exchange or the whichever one, London. It could be everywhere. It doesn't really matter. But based on that, they have to fulfill their compliance needs that are applicable to when you are a stock registered company, and those regulations are in place because Switzerland has been doing this activity of supporting blockchain industry in general already for a good handful of years, likely I would say a decade, where it became kind of a serious industry in the last decade. And you see that now, and you see that large companies are actually coming to Switzerland now for the blockchain industry and not specifically for the taxes anymore. There is still a big benefit to having low corporate taxes, but we also should not forget that the cost of living in Switzerland is high. Just in general, it's high. So the people that you actually do locate in Switzerland, they earn substantially more compared to when you have them somewhere in Latin America, Eastern Europe, or Southeast Asia. And of course, with a remote first approach, which is definitely applicable in a lot of blockchain companies, because hey, we're talking about decentralization. So please decentralize your workforce as well. You don't necessarily need to have everyone in Switzerland. At the same time, also traditional industry is kind of starting to understand that concept. They keep their headquarters with, of course, the senior management in Switzerland, but for instance, they outsource their customer care to Spain, as an example. And the reason for that is that everything has become so cutthroat that in the end, you need to be reasonable and wise on what is important. And if you can save about 50% on your salaries, on your staff expenses in general, yeah, why should you not consider it? The only thing is, and what you then see is that of course you get part of a brain drain from Switzerland. So on one side you attract a lot of high profile people because of the blockchain industry, and on the other side you have your traditional industries that are actually experiencing a bit of a brain drain. So it's it's a fine line, and I don't have an answer to that. I mean, I'm just noticing this in general on how people are the people in Switzerland, the professionals, that they are just switching from more people working in the traditional industries to now working in fintech, in blockchain in general. Interesting development, don't get me wrong, because the traditional situation, Switzerland, of course, not just being known for taxes, also for banking secrecy, the traditional situation, I, yeah, that's definitely not the same anymore. So you also see a lot of banks downsizing, etc., a lot of high qualified professionals out on the job market. And it's not by definition that people lose a job and have a new job lined up in the same week, for instance. So it's just it's. But in fairness, I think this is the same everywhere right now in Western Europe. In talking about Europe in general. But yeah, blockchain industry definitely Switzerland is up and coming insofar it is not already there, and the framework, the industry is ready. The governmental frameworks are ready for when you want to do something like that. There's still a lot of hoops to jump through because a lot of things are not clear. I mean, if you start your supermarket, you know the things you need to take into account. Food safety, certificates, it's all clear because it's been done already for 100 years or so. But now you get to something that has been, well, the blockchain itself, of course, is already dating back to the 70s, but it's now getting to a point where people start to understand what you can do with blockchain, and all sorts of new things come up. I mean, you and I can come up today with a new idea no one has ever heard of, but at that point, it does create a compliance issue, because how are we going to fit this new idea from Mo and Gerard into our existing compliance model? So it's interesting, and I follow it a bit from the sideline. I'm not active in that industry. I'm exposed to it though, but I'm not active in it because, in fairness, I gotta say sometimes it goes so fast I cannot keep up anymore.
Yes, that's one of the things of the blockchain or cryptocurrencies. Generally, that's it's moving very fast. That if you have actually, I mean, if you have been, you can say, based your ideas on fundamentals based on the traditional banking system or the currency system, trying to adapt to the new mindset of the crypto, it's like mind blowing. I've been the first time I've been into crypto almost 10 years ago. I've been to many events And when you go into the events, you don't understand, are these people investors or entrepreneurs, or they are cowboys? Because it's like,
Yes. Yeah. And even so in the new industry, I mean, it's very interesting to see that you still, if you want to scale your company, it's not all about the tech. The of course, blockchain being a heavily tech influenced industry, yeah, of course, perfect. But you still need to have a which we I would call currently call a traditional structure. You have a company, you have a CEO, you have your management team, and then you have your different departments because at the end of the month, everyone needs to be paid. Also, when it's just in stablecoin, it still needs to be managed that everyone gets paid at the end of the month. And so you still have um, a traditional situation blending into a new industry. And in that hybrid form, there's a room for a lot of things you and I are both knowledgeable about. And the specifically myself, I've scaled a traditional company, uh, and in that sense, if I really look at how to scale a blockchain company, bottom line is it's still the same. You need to be able to attract your client so that he does business with you, and then you need to have an organization which is ready to actually service the client when the client pays you. Digitally, that can mean very quickly, oh yeah, but we need to scale up server rooms, etc., etc. Okay, perfect. That sounds easy, but it still needs to be done. And then your project manager comes in place, and you get a couple of hardware architects, and they need to roll it out in a way so that it's stable, it's functioning, and load balancing, and all sorts of technical terms come then to mind which are applicable, but they were applicable 10 and 20 years ago as well.
that's
The
right.
only thing
That's
is,
right.
that uh, with a digital only company, you rely more on them. So redundancy, etc. It becomes a very big thing, and that definitely makes the new industry and the older industry or activities, they blend into one. And so, therefore, I would say scaling a company is still the same. It hasn't really changed. The emphasis has maybe changed a little bit from one side to another side on where to actually put your focus upon. And it's an interesting time because we literally now live in a crossover time from old to new, and we're somewhere in the middle now. Some things leaning to the old, some things leaning to the new. We all know that when you do not move along forward, that in the end it will kill you in the sense that you will go out of business. So we have to, but we don't really understand always what we're doing.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Totally agree. Totally agree. And I mean, you mentioned 2 points I would like to focus in, or just hear more about your experience, because you have seen this in the ground. You mentioned you moved to Cyprus in 2008. You operate a business, you have the banking, you have seen 2008 was the starting of the crisis, or the mid of the global crisis, but you have seen the Cyprus and the Greek crisis. Many people, especially new age or Gen Z or Gen Alpha, whatever they call them, they don't understand that you can wake up one day and you didn't find the banking system in your country, or it's not functioning anymore. Actually, it's happening in other countries, especially like less lucky countries like Lebanon and other yeah, trouble banking system country. But you have seen this yourself. You within Cyprus, you are doing business. So, what kind of advice you can give to all entrepreneurs or investors or people who are thinking that everything is running smoothly, whatever it's the US, the UK. I mean, everywhere now there's unstable. So how you can deal with that such as a mindset, and always prepare for the plan B or backup plan.
Yes, well, first of all, with what I'm about to say, I'm not one of those prepper type of persons that has a basement full of everything, etc. But I do subscribe to a couple of issues the prepper community in general addresses. I'm a big fan of having some food at home. And I'm not saying, oh yeah, but okay, I've got enough food until tomorrow. No, it's good to have for a couple of weeks food at home. I traveled a lot, really a lot. So I always came home, of course, at the most inconvenient times where the supermarkets were closed. Then you are really happy that you actually have still something left that you can warm up, heat up, prepare so that you have some food. I mean, the next day you go shopping again and it's all sorted. But just imagine when I first came in Switzerland, I found out that we did not have any open supermarkets on a Sunday. Oh, okay. How do we do this? We ended up ordering pizza and then found out that there are some kiosks open as well at the railway stations. So it sorts itself always out. But if you don't have to worry about it, makes things a little bit easier. So it's just one example. Have some food at home. Um, Also with a financial crisis, because a financial crisis basically means that a system could also not accept your credit cards, debit cards, any form of plastic anymore. Yeah, or what people do nowadays, pay with their phones. And when it doesn't work and you have your basket full of shopping of groceries, then it doesn't work and then you have to leave them behind. I've seen that happening in Cyprus, where the supermarket just said, okay, we can only accept cash. So when that happened, I was at that point I was abroad. So the first thing I did was I withdrew a lot of money. I withdrew money for 2 months because I was quite clear that I was going to go back to Cyprus and I was going to go and be there for at least 3 to 4 weeks. So I was like, okay, I need 2 months of money and 2 months of money that also included my rent. My rent I always paid, of course, by the bank, and yeah, I couldn't do it anymore. So with my landlord, we. I was the first one that actually approached her. I remember very clearly. I said, "Look, I can't pay via bank, but I have cash." And she said, "Well, I take cash." And the same with the supermarkets, the same with everything. And you only notice that, and Cyprus is of course a very small country, so everyone knows everyone. And the only thing you notice in after about a week is how resilient people are. People find a way. And if you are local or you were living there already for a little bit longer, you found a way. If you just arrived or if you arrived because of tourism and it happened while you were there, you were literally stuck because all of a sudden things don't work anymore. And mind you, we had the euro already. Yeah, imagine that we would still have had the Cyprus pound. And people, tourists from abroad come there and, oh yeah, but I got my dollars, my euros, etc., and I can't do anything anymore. So the of course, tourism always finds a different solution. I completely understand that as well. It just goes to show that whenever there's a problem, there's a solution. A solution is being found. What I found very more interesting coming from, yeah, kind of also preparing yourself for turmoil, for issues in general, is that my mindset was always to have cash at home. My mindset has always been to have some food at home, but I've extended it over time. I would say actually, if you have the opportunity, not just have a week cash at home, but have more cash at home so that you can support yourself in your current lifestyle. Doesn't matter if that's 2,000 euros or 10,000 US dollars, doesn't matter. But be able to continue your lifestyle for 3 months and have that amount in cash at home. Yeah, of course, this goes against everything what the bank says and against everything what currently is being rolled out in Spain and other European countries with their cash limitations, etc. Bottom line, if you don't have it and you only have a couple of hundred and there is a problem, you have a problem. Because trust me, the government has different things to do than dealing with you who cannot buy a bread or um, anything else for that matter. So have some substantial funds at home at least. Also not in a bank account, I think for obvious reasons. I mean, it's good to have something on a savings account, but when your bank is closed, you cannot get to your money. We have also seen that happening, unfortunately, in some other countries where, I mean, plenty of Western based countries have faced the issue of banks going bankrupt. And all of a sudden, people cannot get to their money anymore. Cyprus was a different reason because it was more a governmental bankruptcy, which was forced upon Cyprus by the EU, of course. But commercial banks have gone bankrupt as well. I know a couple of examples from the Netherlands and plenty of other countries which are considered first world countries. The only issue or benefit with a first world country is that you can actually see that a government is more prepared and kind of quicker and willing to open up banks to allow them to let people at least continue paying rent from their accounts and things like that. If such a thing happens in a second or a third world country, forget it. You are basically on your own. You need to solve it. So I'm a big fan of having cash at home. I'm a big fan of gold and silver. Um, there is, I think it still works today where you could say that one coin of gold will pay your rent or mortgage for a month. And I would say it still counts for today, where you could say that one silver coin will pay for your food for a day. And in that sense, it makes sense to me to have six gold coins and to have 180 silver coins. Of course, is it possible for everyone? No, but it doesn't have to be done in one day.
Yes, yeah. Just building the backup strategy, whatever it's just could be food, it could be cash, it could be gold, it
Anything.
could be silver. Yes, yeah, because you will be in a better situation. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the bank has failed. I mean, one of the very famous, you can say, funny stories that Spain starting limiting cash, and a couple of weeks ago, the the whole Spain, the whole Iberia, Spain and Portugal was run out of. There was a blackout and people
Yes.
was looking for cash. So it's, I don't understand how things are. They announced this after the blackout. Does it make sense?
Not to me. And at the same time, one of the Scandinavian countries is almost cashless. And at the same time, I have to salute them for that. They have said, we will not ban cash altogether for likely contingency reasons, such as what happened in Spain a couple of weeks ago. And well, Spain, I mean, uh, talking about Cyprus again, we also had that blackout situation when the power plant exploded because of ammunition storage next to the power plant. So that one we experienced as well. So the banking one was we had electricity and we could actually go and withdraw money from the banks. The uh, power plant situation was that we did not have any power. So some banks, their ATMs didn't work. And then you get to a point, okay, you go to a different ATM. Yes, but you're not alone. You're still queuing because everyone wants money. And at that point in time, it's again cash only in the supermarkets because you cannot use your card to pay for your groceries. So it's an interesting development, first of all, to see. And now we get to a different subject, but it ties into it that we have a huge push going for becoming green, like electric cars and no fossil fuels anymore. And at the same time, our networks are not ready, first of all, for all the electricity that is then needed. The supply demand is then going to kill the basically the networks. Um, okay, very nice. Is it maybe time that I should start to grow my own vegetables?
That's a question. Many people ask this question. I mean, I've met a lot of folks, especially from Germany, and they start buying farms in Paraguay and very remote Latin area countries. And they when I ask them why are you doing this, not just Brazil, but they tell me, I mean, my grandfather have been through the World War II, and he teach me you need to do this. Once you have the money, go and buy a farm in X country in YZ country. So I mean, it's the word is repeating itself. Whatever the backup option you have, it's much better than no options at all. And always be
Yes,
ready with the unexpected because the world is very volatile, and we have seen things that we never been expected. You have seen Cyprus almost 15 years ago now, the global crisis plan, the banking's going up and down, the currencies and the digital only, or the digital only, everything will be running through your mobile phone, even your passport and ID. But having a backup option is open the doors for many instability, and feeling that you are not tied into one structure, which some people doesn't
Yes.
like. Yeah, yeah, I
Yes,
understand.
I know you're very big on second citizenships and things like that, but I would not even go as far as having a second citizenship directly. I would say a second residency is already a good start. A citizenship is not available for everyone immediately. Not everyone has the funds lying around, nor the flexibility in their professional life to make choices like that. But everyone can start out with a second residency and having a second place somewhere, so that you have a backup plan. And that is basically, yeah, I would say by now it's so important for everyone that I kind of, yeah, not really understand why there's not more emphasis on it. Um, yeah, I cannot understand that. It's just I struggle with that, and at the same time, I also do understand that a lot of people are, of course, they only read mainstream media, only what basically is curated by governments on what they want to share with the people, and based on that, I can understand that it's just not on their scope because it's not been on the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah, that's a very common thing. But I mean, what I can tell you, there's the huge growing, especially online media, that's trying to get as much as truth. Sometimes it's not 100% truth, but they're trying to show that what governments are tell is not 100% right, or they're trying to half bake the truth, so you'll not be able
Yes.
to get what expected on the long term. So I mean, before we go, we have been running now almost 45 minutes, so it's been interesting talk. I think we can go this for hours, but I mean, in the sake of the first podcast, I think we should have another podcast, and you can say 2 to 3 weeks from now, with more ideas, or even we can collect a lot of comments and questions from the general audience, and then we build the next podcast about. Before we go now, I just need to have your feedback on the new high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals generation that's coming up, because there is like something, the wealth transfer in the next,
Yes.
the 25 and 35 and 45, there will be a lot of wealth transfer from older generation to new generation. So how, I need to hear your thoughts, your feedback, and other industry professionals that we are doing this, especially in the offshore, in the blockchain, and the startups and entrepreneurs, how we can be ready with the new generation that will take up the new wealth from the old generations.
Yeah, okay. Let me start with a small introduction on that. Initially, when I got first introduced to the offshore industry in general, I was one of the people that was like, no tax is the best solution ever. And over time, that gradually changed. I am not against all taxes. There are some taxes I can actually understand and support as well, for infrastructure, for the highways, and no issues whatsoever. So slowly my ideas started to change, and eventually I'm going to skip all the phases in the middle, but eventually I ended up at the last one, which I currently am 100% in favor of, and that is we need to make sure that the generations that inherit the wealth are financially literate. In other words, we need to educate our younger generations, and I would say they start already at an age maybe 6, 7 years old, with what it means to inherit wealth, to manage wealth, and how it can open doors for them and others which are dependent on them. And so, in short, my answer would be education, and not the education in a classical way, but very specifically applicable to the children of the high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals. Added to that, you also have the new wealth, the Bitcoin millionaires, or maybe even more than just a millionaire, they basically, I would say, need also the proper education on how to protect their assets, how to keep what is theirs within, of course, the legal boundaries of that there is some taxes left and right. And of course, you can do tax planning and reduce the amount of taxes you have to pay, but they need to be educated in that. And that part is currently lacking, I would say, in the entire industry. The reason for why I say so is that in the past, the industry was very much, oh, you come from country A, so this solution is for you. You go from country A to B to C to D, and that's it. And that is, by how the world has changed, I would say not applicable anymore. It's a very, you would have to tailor it very much to the client. It's an individual approach that needs to be done and applied to every single client, because what works for you does not necessarily have to work for me anymore. And it's not because, oh yeah, but we both live in the same country. No, it's because I am exposed to different things than you are being exposed to. Maybe that's because of work. Maybe that's because of extended family. Maybe that's because of hobbies. Maybe that's because of other interests. And because of that, the industry needs to step away and needs to become a little bit more customer centric instead of being very much focused on, okay, you are from Germany. Okay, this is the solution.
So it will be like one-to-one tailor-made advice, and instead of just offering the boutiques advice where you can go and buy Jaguar or Rolls Royce or Bentley, it have to be one-to-one.
It has to be one to one, and then people say, "Oh, yeah, no, but AI is going to take over everything." Yes, AI is going to take over a lot. Don't get me wrong. The bottom line with regards to that, I think AI has a perfect role in this because the turnaround time is going to decrease a lot. Where we now, based on an intake conversation, would take maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, or maybe even longer, depending on how complicated it is, before we have a kind of draft solution. AI could reduce that time before we have a draft solution. So, and also you could AI involve in checking out the solution you're willing to provide. And so I don't really see an issue with regards to the industry for catering towards ultra high net worth individuals. I don't see an issue with AI with regards to that. I think AI will be supplementary.
Okay, so it could be an AI-centric one-to-one
Yes.
advice,
Yes.
and that could be the best solution for the new generations. So
Yeah,
you
I
offer.
think, for instance, and this is not because I'm on your podcast, but I think you are actually doing quite a good, are living a quite a good example. Of course, there's a team of people around you. Uh, that is just necessary in this industry. But bottom line, it is you providing the service to your clients. And it's not, oh, I go to a company that has a huge building somewhere, wherever, doesn't matter where, and I'm being received by a receptionist, and I'm being put in a waiting room. I'm talking to a lawyer, or maybe a team of lawyers and assistants and whatever is necessary, accountants, and you name it. No, it's just a one-on-one conversation. You can go to your client, you do your intake, and basically you schedule another meeting for a couple of weeks later. And it also gives you the opportunity to, besides just coming with a tailor-made solution for that client, it also gives you a better opportunity to find the right suppliers for the services you need. There's a lot of companies that, let's call it, sell offshore companies from a certain jurisdiction. And sometimes one of those companies could be the best solution ever. The issue I have with that in a complex structure for an ultra high net worth individual is that the standard articles of association are normally not covering what you need to get covered for that specific situation. So it needs to be tailor made. And with offering a tailor-made solution, you also have to be very clear on with which service provider you do business in order to acquire that specific entity in that structure, or for that matter, even with whom is going to be director on that company, so that substance and presence requirements can be met.
Yeah,
But
that.
it's just changing, and I would say the large firms in this industry, the only benefit they have is they have clients with a lot of money, so they are wealthier than smaller firms, and they would be able to implement the newer AI solutions faster. The only thing we also see with larger firms is that because of them being so large, it takes a long time before they actually will implement new technology to serve them in serving their clients. And this is also looking at the industry for the new industries with the blockchain and the cryptos, etc. This is where I think that the smaller firms, they are more agile and they're more able to just basically cater towards the needs that are necessary. If you speak to the average ultra high net worth individual right now, then they will also say something along those lines, that this new industry, it's not for them anymore, but they do understand very well and very clearly that in order to maintain their wealth, to protect their assets, they will have to adopt to something that actually integrates the new technology into their um, activities, into their structures, etc.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And that's one of the things that you always see, that new money which coming from, for example, Bitcoin or the blockchain or cryptocurrency, these guys will invest on high risk because they have seen the reward.
Yeah,
So they invest
yeah,
on high risk, but also the old money will see how much money they are the new money is making, and they will try to put into. And this has happened with BlackRock when they invested a lot of billions into Bitcoin. And you never think 5 years ago or 10 years ago that BlackRock will do such, you can say, way of investing. Everyone
agreed.
saw
Yes.
it would never happen, but it actually happened. And there's more coins and more stable things that you see this happen. So that could be the topic of our next episode. We will discuss about how to play safe with the blockchain industry. How can Switzerland generally, or Zug or Zurich, could be the stable ones, and how to differentiate them from other jurisdictions like Dubai or Singapore or Hong Kong, and also how to build the resilient in a very unstable world
Well,
in the next.
I still think that all the jurisdictions play a role. Diversification is the first thing that comes to mind. Never put all your eggs in one basket. In that sense, so it's not just, oh yeah, no, I live in Switzerland, so Switzerland is the holy grail. It's important, but I won't call it the holy grail. It plays its part in a larger structure, and especially for the younger generations, they are less fixed to fixated on one place. They're not um, always as interested in, oh yeah, you know what? I have my mansion or my villa here, and this is my home base. That's not how they think. So they encounter whole level of different issues when they are of great wealth, and once it becomes known that they are of great wealth, because if you're always on the move, you need to think about personal security. The last couple of weeks, we have seen several news reports from London and Paris, etc., where people from whom it was known that they owned Bitcoin or traded Bitcoin were kidnapped for ransom. So you get to a whole different dynamics from the old money, so to say, to the new money. And that also is not even only based on the blockchain industry in general, but just on how the Gen Z, being the first ones, but also Gen Alpha, how they have a different approach to life, to leading their life in general. And that comes with um, old industry solutions, because safety and security is a very much an old industry solution. very applicable to them, though.
Yeah. And they have to adapt because they build their business on being a public face. And now once you have reached a certain amount of wealth, you'll not be able to be public anymore. Or you'll not be able to go into an Instagram and just type I'm now in Marriott in Berlin and London and Dubai and just share your location and everyone was low. That will not be feasible anymore. So it's about a mind change. And this is the same thing going into education. So Gen Z and Gen Alpha need education. And we are the older generation, we have to educate them. That's the only way
Yes.
around, yes?
Yeah, well, and this is a bit of a contradiction, of course, because we also don't really know on how the new industry works into detail. I mean, not even Gen Z, Gen Alpha knows. They just have learned a certain part that has increased their wealth, sometimes exponentially. And at the same time, I think the best way is to find a balance in this case between the older generations and the newer generations. And the greatest adaptation has to come from the older generations.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And in that sense, I'm one of those as well. We have to adapt to them and at the same time try to bring our message across on how to protect their assets and the things they need to take into account. Because with great wealth comes great responsibilities. And those are old lessons, but still very, very, very present in today's day and age and something that should not be forgotten.
Yeah. We should start a security firm now for
Yes.
Bitcoiners.
We'll talk offline about that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gerard. It's been a very interesting topic. We podcast. We have a lot of discussions. We discuss about Cyprus, Zooks, Zurich, different how to protect your assets, how to have a backup options, even just a couple of food in the fridge or the just long shelf food that you can say gold coins and silver coins. That's a couple of ideas people forget, but it's actually work. And that will open the door for more podcasts together very soon. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you. At last, we've been talking for a couple of years now, and let's keep in touch. You would like to
Thank you
say
very
anything?
much. Thank you very much for today, Mo. It was all my pleasure. And yes, looking forward. And let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll always close my podcast. Stay global, my friends. And thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.
Bye bye.